Fabulous. Well, it is a pleasure to have you along on this, in North Yorkshire, sunny Thursday afternoon for our seed gathering live lesson. Now, this is the first live lesson we've done for seed gathering season, which is a bit crazy because it's my favourite time of year in this tree world. So it is really a pleasure to have you here. Like I said, it's great if your young people can have something to write on and something to write with. If they don't have the worksheets themselves, that's absolutely no problem. We will have images that will help on the screen, but something to write things down would be really helpful. So like I say, this is my favourite time of year in the tree calendar. It is the magic of growing trees from seed. And we're going to learn a little bit about how trees can do this and what we can do to get involved and to help grow our own trees from seed. So you're going to be hopefully understanding by the end of this session how trees make seed, the different types of seeds that trees grow, how they are dispersed. Now, dispersed is a funny word. Don't worry if you don't know what that word means. We're going to pick it apart and work out what exactly that means, and how we can grow trees from seed. And hopefully that's something that, even if it's not this year, it's something that you might get involved with at some point. So if you don't know us, my name is Katie. I am the Schools Programme Manager at the Tree Council. And the Tree Council is a charity that brings people together for the love of trees. We are in our 50th year and we work all across the UK, England, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, planting trees, funding trees, caring for trees and hedgerows too. They're often forgotten about, the unsung heroes of the countryside. We have scientists who work with us, who help us to support trees better, help us understand them more. And we also work with the government as well to help them make important decisions about trees and the funding and planting of trees. And we work with you guys, we work with schools all across the UK to inspire the next generation of people who are going to care for our trees and give nature the boost that it needs. So if you don't know the Young Tree Champions programme, I know that we've got some schools joining us who are brand new and who've just applied this year to the programme, and some who may not yet have applied and may not have heard of the Young Tree Champions programme. So we work with over 250,000 pupils and teachers in schools across the UK, with almost coming up to 800 schools. It will be close to 1,000 by the end of the application window. And we've planted more than 32,000 trees. So together, we work really hard to be an amazing force for nature. And the fact that you guys have joined us today suggests that you already are a bit of a force for nature. So that's fantastic. And the way we do it is we encourage young people to connect to nature, learn more about it, care for it, and then share that passion and enthusiasm. So that's a little bit about what we do. But now let's get on to that important topic of trees and why we might grow them from seed. So hopefully some of you guys, like I say, haven't fallen asleep after a really delicious lunch, and that your brains are on the go. Can anyone tell me, and we can use the chat function to share your answers, why you think we might want to grow trees from seed? Why is it a good thing to do? Why grow trees at all? And if we do grow them, why don't we just buy some? You might hear I've got a fighter jet flying overhead, so please excuse any noise that you hear. What do we think? Why do we grow trees at all? And why might we grow them from seed? Anybody got any answers? Anyone got any ideas? If you do, type them in the chat. Give you a moment of thinking time. It's something that a lot of people haven't done in their lives. A lot of people haven't grown trees from seed. They give us oxygen. Oh, such an important one. Absolutely vital to us being healthy and alive is that trees provide oxygen for us. So the more that we can input into the world, the more trees we can create, the better that is for us. Absolutely. And the benefit of creating them from seed is that they give us the oxygen, they make the air fresher. Mrs. Morell's group's on fire today. It's great to see. But by making them from seed, we can grow trees for free, and we can grow as many as we want. So it's a really, really positive thing, absolutely, to secure our future on the Earth, on this planet, and the future of lots of different wildlife as well that are supported by trees. Fantastic answers, well done. So the question is, how does the magic happen? How do trees create seed? Now, there's a really confusing word on the board. when I first saw it, I had to ask one of our scientists what this word meant. Monoecious trees. Now, these are trees that have both male and female parts on the same tree. So they're all on one, mono being one. And on the picture you can see on the screen, you've got a picture of a hazel tree. You've got the long part of the tree, the catkins, they're the male part that produce pollen. And then in that little circle that you can see, there's a tiny little flower. And for that tree to make seed, pollen from the long catkins needs to reach the flower. Can anybody guess from the next image that you're going to see what helps the pollen to reach the flower for things like a hazel tree? Can anybody guess from that picture what might help that pollen to reach the flower? How do we get the pollen into the flower, which will then make a seed? That picture might give you a little bit of a clue that you can see, that one in the middle of the screen with the black background. Because sometimes trees need a helping hand. They can't do it completely on their own. And there is something in that picture that is helping that pollen reach this flower to form a tree seed. Anyone know what it is? Wind, absolutely spot on. Now we've got two answers, interestingly. So we've got Miss Clark's class that has said wind, which is correct for this occasion. I'm going to come back to Miss Morell's because that's going to help. She's already answered the next one. I don't know if any of you get sneezy at certain types of the year from hay fever. Unfortunately for us, some of that comes from tree pollen. And it's trees like the hazel where the pollen is spread by the wind to reach the flower. And whilst it's sneezy and it's uncomfortable and it might make our eyes itch, that is what is keeping the trees going. That is what's helping them produce more seed and make more trees in the future. So whilst it is inconvenient and it is a bit awkward for us, it's really important for the tree survival. The other type of monoecious tree, so that's where we've got male and female on the same tree, they're on the same flower on the same tree. So this is a picture of a cherry tree and it's got a beautiful little blossom flower on it, which you'll see around springtime. Now on that, you've got them both in the same flower, and the thing that helps pollinate them, the things that help get that pollen to the egg, Mrs. Morell's class has already answered it, is bees, pollinators, flies, things that are going to crawl across that flower, that beautiful flower that attracts them, and it's going to spread that pollen to that egg and it's going to make a seed of the future. In fact, I think I've got one here somewhere, but I'll show you it later on. I've got a seed that's come from a cherry tree, so I'll show you what one of those will look like. So that's one way that trees can make seeds. The pollen goes from the male part of the tree onto the flower, or onto the stigma in this case, and it will fertilize the egg that will then grow a seed. The other types of trees we have are dioecious. Now this means that we don't have male and female on the same tree. They grow on different trees. So a holly tree is an example of this. So you will have holly trees that are male and holly trees that are female. And only the holly trees that are female, so this one's from a female holly tree, will grow berries. So you might see some holly trees, you might see some around your school grounds, in your community, on your walk to school or in your garden. And you might think, why does this tree never have any berries on it? Holly's got red berries. That might be because it's a male tree. And so for holly, only half of the holly trees, only the female ones are ever going to get a seed on them. So that's quite interesting because some of our trees behave quite differently to others. Now, these seeds come in all shapes and sizes, and we're going to look at some of those in a minute. But what's amazing is that all of the seeds have some secret special ingredients. Now, it's even more amazing because some of these seeds are so incredibly tiny. They're smaller than a pinhead, and yet they've got the important secret ingredients within them. They've got an embryo. Now, an embryo is basically a baby tree. So it's got a tiny little baby tree inside that seed. It's got a seed coat to wrap around it. What do you reckon that seed coat is needed for? Why do you think that it needs a coat to wrap around it? That tiny little baby tree. What do you think that seed coat's doing? Why do we need to wrap our little tiny baby tree in a coat? What's that coat there to do you think? Can anybody guess what they think that seed coat might be trying to do? Protect it, absolutely. And it might be trying to keep it warm. That's a good point we're going to come back to. It's got food in there, because if you are going to need to grow big and strong, you're going to want some food to help you do that. And then it's got something called cotyledons, which is a very strange word. But that is the tiny little leaves that are already inside that seed before it starts to grow into a tree. Now, when that seed bursts out, it needs to get energy from the sun straight away. So it's got some leaves ready-made inside that seed. I'm getting attacked by a leaf. Ready to burst out and catch the first rays of sun. They won't necessarily look like the leaves on the tree eventually. They might be a different shape, but they're there ready to go to make some energy from the sun. So what I'd like you to do, if you've got a worksheet in front of you, it's going to have a little section that says what's in a seed and has a circle. If not, and you've got a bit of paper and a pencil, just draw yourself a little circle. I'd like you to draw inside this seed the things that are in there. It's got a tiny little baby tree. It's got food in there. It's got some leaves in there. And then the seed coat is going to go around the outside. So you're just going to draw a little coat around the outside. So you're going to draw and label the things I found in a tiny tree seed. Some tree seeds aren't as tiny, actually, but we're going to look at them in a minute. So on that sheet, you're just going to write down, you're just going to label, draw a little picture, a tiny little tree. Food, what might you draw for food? I'm thinking of lots of things now. So I'm thinking of my favourites. Might draw an apple. It's because I can see one in front of me. And then some leaves, some little tiny leaves that are already inside that seed. And it's amazing to think that inside every one of the seeds that you see on a tree, they will have those things inside, those special ingredients. So I'm going to give you about 90 seconds. It doesn't need to be a work of art, but it's just to stop you forgetting. So when you draw these things, you might want to label them. That's what I always did when I drew things, because they weren't brilliant works of art. So it helps me remember what the heck I tried to draw. So you're going to label them and you're going to say what they are. And then it means that it'll go into your brain a little bit better, hopefully. So inside that seed, we've got a tiny little tree. Again, it doesn't need to be a beautiful piece of art, as long as you can tell it's a tree, or you can write the word tiny tree next to it. A coat around the outside. Some food inside. Burger, might try burger. And some leaves, cotyledons, and just those little leaves that are ready to unfurl the second it pops its head out of the soil to gather some of that sun's energy, because it'll turn that into a starchy energy, a sugary energy that'll make it grow even faster. So hopefully you've got beautifully labelled little seeds with little pictures to show what is already hiding inside those seeds, those secrets that are already there, that a lot of people don't know about, but you guys do know. Okay. Hopefully you've got some of that done. If not, I'm sure you will be able to catch up and get those bits done later on. You can finish any bits off after that you might not get done during the session. So now we're going to look at the different types of seed, because in front of me, I don't know how well you can see, but I've got all sorts of different types of seed in front of me, and they all look very different. And the reason that they look very different is because they all have slightly different ways of doing things. It's amazing how clever trees are. And one of the things that's really important is that they can disperse their seed. Now, that's a word I said is quite a difficult word to understand. But when a tree disperses its seed, it spreads it far and wide. And that's really important. If a seed falls underneath the tree that it comes from and falls straight down to the ground, and that's where it lands, what do you think is going to be a problem? What is it not going to get very much of if it falls right down next to the trunk of the tree that it's fallen off? If it falls down, like this one that we can see here, number 4, and it falls right down there underneath the branches of the tree it's come from, why might that be a problem? What might it not get enough of? What do you think? What might that tree not get enough of? Sunlight, absolutely. So it's going to be in the shade of that big tree that it's fallen from. So it won't get as much sunlight. Also, that big tree going through the ground has got lots of roots. And so exactly, well done. I can see straight away it's going to have fighting for the water. That big tree is going to be absorbing water off the ground. Its branches are going to be shading it from water falling from the sky. And it's not going to have a lot of space. So the trees want to get their seed to go as far away as they can. And so lots of different seeds are designed differently to help spread them further. So before we look at the seeds, I want you guys to be seed designers and to have a think. How would you design a seed that you want to float through the air to spread further, to disperse further? How would you design that seed? What would it look like? So again, you're either using a worksheet, you've got a piece of paper, you've drawn a little circle that resembles the seed. What is your seed going to have on it, around it, to help it float further away through the air? Oh, we've got nutrients from the ground. That's another good one. So the more space that it has, the further it is from other trees, the more sunlight, water, nutrient it's going to have to grow. And that's why it needs to get far away from the tree if it can. So you're going to have a think, you're going to, on your piece of paper, you're going to design a seed that is meant to float far away, as far away as it can from that tree to get its own little bit of space. So think about what is going to be attached to it, around it, under it, in it, to help it to float through the air. Now, these are going to have to be natural things. We'd love to just stick a motor on it and fly away, but that's unfortunately trees are going to struggle with that. So think about how could a tree get its seed to float further away? What might it need? And then in a minute, we're going to look at some seeds that do that, and we're going to see how similar yours is to the ones that nature's created. The next task, if you've got that done, don't worry if you don't get all of these finished, but the next task, if you get that done, is what if you were a tree that grows next to water, next to a stream, next to a river? One of the ways that you could disperse your seeds further or spread them further would be if they floated down the river, down the stream, to their own bit of space. So what would your seed look like? How would it be packaged? How would it be equipped to float in water? Sometimes, for me, I think about things in the human world that we use to help us floating and flying and floating through air and floating through water. And then you might design something similar for your seed. Teachers, by the way, one of the fun tasks that you can do at a later date is to do a bit of a seed engineering task and have something that becomes the seed, whether it's a little circle of paper or whether it's a little ping pong ball or something, and have a little test so you can get it to float the furthest in front of a fan across a classroom or across a yard. A little engineering task. And then the last design, and this might be very different for each of you because you might have very different tastes. But if you needed a seed to look tasty, and we're going to get onto how that spreads it further, but if you could get a seed to look tasty, what would surround it? What would be attached to it? How would it be designed to look tasty? I've already started to give away some of the things I like to eat, so you can probably guess how I might disguise my seed to make it look tasty. I'd love to see some of these, by the way, guys. So I will share our school's email address at the end of this, and it'd be grand if you shared some of them. It'd be wonderful to see your work so hard. Okay, so that's me giving your designer brains a test. And like I say, you might have only worked on one. and perfected your beautiful drawing of that design, you might have managed to get something done for all three. But what you're thinking about is how you would design the seeds to float through the air, float in water, or look tasty. And these are important ways that nature helps trees to spread or disperse their seed further. Now, there are technically 5 types of tree seed, but there are 4 main ones that we're going to focus on. And the Tree Council, we've done a guide called the Tree Growers Guide, and they've got a really great breakdown. I'll give you some information on where you can find that for free online on the different types of seed. And we've also got one called the Young Tree Growers Guide that will give you lots of different tasks on how to learn more about growing trees from seed. But this one picture here comes from the Tree Growers Guide. And the first type of seed we've got are cones. So you can see some of them on the screen there in the top left of that circle. I've got some in front of me here. We're going to look at them in a bit more detail in the not too distant future. And these cones, like pine cones, you might see around at Christmas time, often grow on things like fir tree, pine trees. We also have them growing on our native alders and birches as well. Now they will eventually open up, and their seeds will normally spread on the air and they will float. We have the nuts, and they are things that you may well have filled your pockets with at one time or another. Things like horse chestnut or conkers, things like hazelnuts, birch trees produce nuts, and we have acorns as well, which technically is not classed as a nut. Not something we're going to eat like you might eat other nuts. But they kind of behave in the same way. We put them into that category. Give you a quick test. What does an acorn grow into? What type of tree? Do you guys know? Because most people say acorn tree, and that's not quite right. It tricks us with the name of an acorn. Type it in the chat if you know what type of tree an acorn grows into. An oak tree, super. I knew you guys would know. So the next one's a fleshy fruit. Sorry, back to those nuts. So these nuts, so they can be dispersed in a couple of different ways. So you will find that they're quite round. So like this conker, well done, Sadie. Sadie knew it was an oak tree as well. Oak is one of my favourite trees. I find it hard to pick a favourite, but it's one of them. Now, these nuts are often quite round like this conker. So sometimes they will be dispersed by dropping and rolling. They will roll. They will be kicked sometimes accidentally, and they will spread that way. The other way is that some other wildlife like to take them away from the oak tree. Does anyone know anyone who might, not any one of you, any wildlife who might like to store things like chestnuts and acorns, nuts that they might want to eat later on? They might go and bury them in ground around the trees sometimes, depending upon the wildlife. We're all Lula spot on. Yeah, absolutely. So we've actually got creatures helping to disperse these seeds as well. Now, the other one that's different is the horse chestnut, which comes in a spiky little case, which is a bit like a little life vest. Now, that there will help that horse chestnut to float, because actually horse chestnuts, where they were originated on the sides of rivers, and those little casings, the prickly little casings that protect them from things eating them, that would also help them float down the river. Now, these fleshy fruits come next. They're things like berries, but they're also bigger fruits, like your apples. And they are designed to taste nice because the seeds are right at the heart of those fleshy fruits. And it's a little bit disgusting, this, guys, but if something eats them, if birds eat those berries and then fly away, somewhere in the distance, they're going to poop out the tree seeds. And not only is that going to spread that seed further, but it's going to come out with its own little bit of fertilizer, its own bit of bird poo, which will actually help it grow, will be like its own little boost as it gets started. So these are designed to look pretty, be brightly coloured, to taste nice to nature, and that helps spread them further away from the tree that they come from. And then the last ones are the winged seeds. So we've got things like your field maple, your sycamore. I've got some here. These ones are sycamore seeds. And these are sometimes, I used to call these helicopters, because when they twizzle down from the tree, they spin. They've got these long wings on them that the wind will catch, and it will take them further from the tree. Some of these have been found 4,000 meters from the tree that they come from. That's about 40 football pitches is how far that can float on the wind. So that's quite amazing. And this is all nature's own creation. So that's nature helping trees survive by giving them their own bit of space, their own bit of sunlight, and their own bit of water and patch to grow into a large tree. Interesting fact as well, before we go on any further, a tree, so if I have a tree here near me, and a sycamore, for example, and it produces seeds, and one of them takes root in the next garden along or the next field along, the tree that it came from will recognize that that tree nearby is its own baby. They will know that that came from its own seed. And under the ground, trees have got roots that stretch between them, and also those roots are connected by something called a mycorrhizal network. That's a network of threads of fungi, and they will connect different trees, and they will mean that the trees can send nutrients and water to each other if they need a bit of help. So a tree will know that its own baby tree is growing over there, and then will send water through the ground to help it grow and to help it be strong. It will also, if it feels it's not got enough space, it will direct its new root growth in the opposite direction to give its own baby a little bit more space, which is kind of cute. So we think trees are kind of just doing their own thing and not paying attention to anything and aren't doing very much. But they're actually their own little family and they care for each other as well, which is really sweet. Okay, so we had those 4 types. I'm just going to put that back on the screen just so you remember. Those 4 types of seed: the cones, the nuts, the fleshy fruits, and the winged seeds. I would like you to take a look at the pictures that are on the board. If you've got the worksheets, they're on that worksheet too. And for each one of those, I would like you to decide which category it falls into. Is it a cone? Is it a nut? Is it a fleshy fruit, like a berry? Or is it a winged seed? So you can write them down if you've got your worksheet next to each one. You could write one of those 4 things down next to each one. If you're just using paper and a pen, you could write down the word hawthorn and write next to it corn or nut or fleshy fruit or winged seed, depending on which one you think it is. I'm going to pick a few to go through. I might pick some of the hard ones as well. I think some of these are slightly harder than others. Okay, so I'm going to pick one. And if you can tell your teacher, who is, I'm assuming, the one at the computer typing, let's say alder. Alder, what do you think it is? A corn, a nut, a fleshy fruit, or a winged seed? Alder. What do you think it is? Find the picture of it on the screen or on your sheet if you've got a sheet. And tell me which one you think it is. It is a corn, Lena. Spot on, well done. So it is the only native UK tree that produces corns like this. And that means there are lots of other trees that produce corns, but they weren't necessarily from the UK hundreds and thousands of years ago. So they might come over from places like America or Europe. Okay. Next one. Hawthorn. What do you think hawthorn is? What type of seed do you think a hawthorn seed is? I'm going to find one of my I've got my wild cherry seed. Hawthorn. I'd love to see how many people are contributing in Mr. L's class as well. Loads of you have got ideas and answers. That's great to see. What do we think a hawthorn is? A corn, a nut, a fleshy fruit, or a winged seed? Hope a bird didn't steal my cherry seed, but no, whilst I was away. Harry and Frank Arthur fleshy fruit. It is. So that's one that the birds love. You'll often see hawthorn grow in hedgerow. So they'll grow in hedges along the edges of the garden, along the edge of the field, along the edge of the road. And you'll often see birds like blackbirds in there eating away at the berries. They find them delicious. The last one I'm going to test you on is the hardest one, I think, on there, and that is beech. Beech. So you can see the picture of it on there. I've got one of those seed pods there. Kind of like slightly prickly on the outside. What type of seed do you think a beech is? Like I say, it's quite a hard one. It looks a bit different from some of the others of its variety. You can't really see the bit inside that pod either. This is a tiny little version you can see there. That's the bit that comes inside the pod. It is a nut. Well done. It is. So Peyton, Gerard, well tried. It is. It does look, those bits of pod that open up do look a bit like wings, but it's quite heavy, which I know you can't see on the screen, but it's quite heavy. And the bit inside is a little. It's almost like it's got three sides. It's almost like triangular if you look at it end on. But that's a little nut. Well done. I'll quickly go through the rest. A horse chestnut, well, it's food in it. It's a nut. Hazel is a nut. Wild cherry is a fruit. A field maple is a winged seed. And you will see that the wings on a field maple go straight out at each side. And that's how you tell the difference between that and a sycamore, because those wings hang down and the field maple wings go out the side. But the leaves look quite similar. And they sometimes are in hedgerows or the trees. An oak seed, an acorn, is a nut. And a birch is a corn. So well done. You guys are becoming seed experts already. I can see that. So that's absolutely fantastic. So you know what types of seeds they are. You can tell now by just looking at them and looking at pictures. So that's pretty impressive. Now, to actually identify what type of seed you've got, our tree growth guide is good to help. But for me, I need to look at the whole picture. Sometimes you can tell just by looking at the seed. Sometimes it helps to have a look at the leaves of the tree that the seeds. So it might be either the leaves might still be on the tree, they might be on the ground around, turning slightly brown. Some of these ones have been. But they will sometimes help me find the seed. And sometimes I'll walk along the street. You see this big horse chestnut leaf that I've got here. I don't know if you can see me, but that for me, I walk along looking for trees with these big leaves hanging off them. They're almost like fingers, the leaves coming off each one. The lobes, they're called, those parts, they're like fingers. And I'll walk along looking for these in the trees above me, and that's where I'll start rummaging around for horse chestnut for conkers underneath. Well, I didn't know that. Well done. Thanks for letting me know. I appreciate that. You can't actually hear me as well when I hold things up. I will make sure that I will try to avoid blocking that. Thank you. Okay, it's good to have the chat functions here so you can keep me straight, guys. Okay, so that's how you will identify seeds. You can use that book. You can look for ones that you recognize, but look at the leaves, look for some other clues. Sometimes you can find the trees in spring and summer when the leaves are really bright and really strong, and then you know to go back to that tree to gather some seed when it comes to autumn time. So now we're going to talk about gathering the seed in itself, what we do when we've got it. So I've got a pile of seeds in front of me. What do I need to do with those seeds now I've got them? And how do I care for them to grow them into trees of the future? There is a sheet that you may have if you have the worksheet, which is just where you can make notes so that at the end of this session, you don't forget everything that we've said and you know what you're going to do next to help you grow some little trees from seeds. You can fill this in as we go through the next bit. What the steps are to gathering seeds, how you process each of the different seeds because they get treated differently, how we help them prepare for their first winter, and how we sow them into the ground so that they become trees, and just some things that you might need. So, the first thing you guys need to do is to gather seed. So there's some important things that you need to think about. Plan things ahead. if you're going to turn your seed, sometimes we go out just for the fun of gathering seed. We gather some bits, we might look at them, we might play with them, and then we might just kind of throw them back onto the soil for nature to do its thing. And that's absolutely fine. But if you're going to grow them into trees, you might need to think about what kind of trees do I want. Now, you can sometimes find hundreds and hundreds of conkers of horse chestnut seeds. They grow into really, really huge trees. Have you got home for hundreds of huge trees? Because if you've not, then there's no point in growing them into trees if you don't know where to put them. If you've got someone else who's got a home for them and they've got permission to plant them, then that's fine. But there's no point in growing trees that unfortunately are then going to end up dying because they've got no home. So think about what trees you would like. Then you go and gather those seeds. You're just doing it for fun, that's absolutely fine. And you can throw the seeds back into nature when you're done with them. Get permission if you're going to go onto someone's land to take seeds. So if you can see a tree in someone's garden, that should be your garden. If it's not, you need to make sure you've got permission to get the seed. And the same for if it's a farmer's field or somewhere like that. And the next one is be safe. What things do you think we need to do to be safe if we're gathering tree seeds? What might we have with us to kind of protect ourselves? Anyone got any ideas? How might we keep safe when we are, what might we avoid doing? What might we have with us to protect ourselves? Anyone got any ideas? How do we make sure we don't have accidents and we don't have injuries? Think about the kind of things that might injure us, the kind of accidents that we might have. Yeah, absolutely. Look out for nettles, look out for brambles. Sometimes they've got some really sharp thorns on them. So you need to be careful. You might want to wear gloves, perhaps. Ticks, that is a really, really, really useful one, Sadie, and that's really important. And that might be dependent upon where you are. If you're somewhere that you know deer go, that sheep go, then that's more likely. So definitely be careful and check yourself over once you've got back from looking around, just to make sure you've got no ticks on you. You might want to wear gloves. Some of the seeds that you collect might have sharp bits on them, like we said. Horse chestnuts do, thorns absolutely, and that's why you might want gardening gloves that are slightly thicker so that you don't injure yourself. I would also suggest that you collect the seed that falls to the ground because we don't need injuries from falling out of trees that we've tried to climb. Wellies might be a great idea. I'm in the sunshine today, Jacob, but it's been pouring down yesterday. So all the ground around me is wet. So wellies would be a great idea. Like I said, I wouldn't recommend you climb trees to get seed because that can be risky. You have professionals who will do that, but they will have ropes, they will have safety harnesses, they will have helmets, and so they will make sure that they are safe. Absolutely. If it's really, really windy, Isabel, you might want to pick a different day in case anything does fall. Some of these seeds, if they fall from the tree onto your head, will hurt as well. So it is something just to be careful of. But it's a great fun thing to do. It's just being careful, being aware. And I would always suggest you go with an adult. Other things I would suggest is make sure you don't eat any of the things that you gather. You might think they are edible. They might technically be, but I would say do not eat any of the things that you gather. And the other thing I would recommend is washing your hands as soon as you get back in and avoiding touching your mouth with your hands before you've washed them. Because you may go to a tree or something, the seeds that you pick up won't be the cleanest things. If they've been on the ground, you don't know what animals have been near them. So make sure you wash your hands before you touch face, before you eat anything, as soon as you get back inside. Now, I am going to go through now how we will process. I've got all these great seeds back here with me. What do we need to do with them now? So I'm going to go through them one by one and I'm going to take down my slides so you can actually see me, which might be scary for you. I apologise for it, but it will hopefully mean that you will see me and you will be able to see what it is that we're doing. Yeah. Okay. The first one that I'm going to do, I'm hoping that you can see me at a reasonable size. Can you all see me, guys? Give me a little wave if you can see me. Yeah, super duper. Nice to see you all. Oh, it's lovely to see your faces as well. So the first seed that I'm going to do is I'm going to pick. Who wants to pick? Someone give me a seed. Shall I do corns, nuts, fleshy fruit, winged seeds? Which one should we do first? Give me a type of seed that I'm going to do first. Your choice. Which one do we want to try? Fleshy fruits. Okay, these are a good one. So I've got some seeds here. They're all in a bit of a knot. Sun's going against me now, starting to shine right on my face. These are the red fleshy fruit of a rowan tree. I've got other fleshy fruit here. I've got little crab apples. These ones are all quite yellow. And I've got bigger fleshy fruit. This is a cooking apple. And this one is off one of the trees over there behind me. So I can process them differently. Now, for the seed to work, the seed is in the middle of the fleshy fruit. I can either just pick it apart with my fingernails and my hands. I can squeeze it till the seed comes out. And in the middle of this fleshy fruit, there is some dark, I don't know whether you'll see them on the camera, but there is a little dark seed in the middle of that fruit there. That's the bit that's going to turn into a tree. Now, it's only going to do that if it doesn't have any more fruit on it. So once I've taken it out, I'm going to have to give it a bit of a wash. The other thing that I could do is I could take a bowl of water or a container. I could drop some of my fleshy fruit inside it. And then I could take a potato masher. Now, I've picked a jug because it's glass so you can see in it, but my masher doesn't fit. But if I mash and mash and mash and mash, then the seeds will float to the top and all of the bits of flesh will go to the bottom. I'll be able to just scoop them off and then they're ready to go, okay? If I've got something like a crab apple or an apple, I'm going to cut that open and I'm going to take those seeds out. Again, I'm going to need to wash them so that fleshy fruit is gone. Right, so that's the processing bit for a fleshy fruit. What should we do next? I love that we've got fleshy fruit picked by balls. Nuts. Okay, so I've got a few here. I've got some chestnuts. I've got some acorns. Just for interest, guys, I've got two different types of acorns here. Can you see this one? It's got a furry little case. That is a turkey oak, from a turkey oak. The other ones are in nice little cups. This isn't either comes from native ones. You get acorns like this from English oaks and from sessile oaks. I'm not going to plant any of these because sometimes the creatures that live on these are harmful to the English oaks. So whilst they're interesting to see, I'm not going to plant any of the ones with the little fuzzy bits on the end. That turkey oak one that's kind of bristly. They're lovely. The animals can eat them, but I'm not going to plant any more of those around here. I'm just going to stick to these ones that are native to our country. So I'm going to take my jug of water again. I'm going to take my nuts and I'm going to drop them in. If that seed sinks to the bottom, that is going to grow into a tree. If that seed floats, oh, that one sunk to the bottom. If it's a nut, if it floats, it's not going to grow into a tree very well. Let me see if I can find another one, see if it sinks or floats. So this is called the float test. If it goes to the bottom, it's probably going to turn into a tree. Oh, look at these are all great. If it floats, oh, that one there is floating at the top. That one probably won't grow into a tree, okay? So I'm going to take all of these ones out the bottom and they're all ones that I'm going to use. So I'm going to scoop them all out. And these four that all sank, they're the ones that I'm going to use. So that's what I do with nuts. With corns, you have to be a bit patient. Now, a corn will often start completely closed up, and that's what you want. You will find tiny little corns, if they're green, on a birch tree, completely closed up. Now, I will take these, and depending on the size, I'm going to put them into a paper bag or a little envelope, and I'm going to put them somewhere warm for a good few weeks, maybe even months. And in that time, they will open up and the seeds that are packed tightly inside are going to come out. And they're tiny little seeds that will blow away if you're outside. Now, I've got a tub here of some of the seeds that have come out of a birch tree. Now, I'm just going to pick a few out and they're probably going to blow away. They are the size probably of the head of a pin. They're almost a bit like confetti floating away in front of me. They're absolutely tiny. It's like sawdust inside there. They're all individual tree seeds that have come out of a corn. So what you want to do is you want to put them into like a paper bag or something like that, somewhere warm. And then over time, they'll open up, give it all a shake. and those seeds will come out. And then my last one, my winged seeds, let's take some sycamore. Winged seeds often are in pairs, and you've got kind of a fat end, and then you've got the wings. The fat end is the seed. I'm going to pull those apart because that there could make 2 trees, and that's them ready to go. So that's how we process them. They're literally ready to go. Now, to grow them, I'm going to take some sand. This is sand that I got from a builder. Because seeds are going to grow over winter. I'm going to make a mixture, and I'm going to make it up with half sand and half compost. The sand is going to make sure that the trees don't get too wet. It's going to keep the water flowing through it. And I'm just going to mix that all up here, half and half. And I'm going to be a bit disgusting, guys. I'm going to mix it up with my hands. I've not got anything else with me, but I'm going to make sure that I wash them before I do anything else. So I'm going to mix that up. And I've got kind of sandy, composty mixture there. Now, if it's just a nut, I can literally just push that into the pot and cover it over. And I can put maybe 5 nuts into that pot. If it's any smaller seeds, I sprinkle them over the top, and I can sprinkle a little bit more mixture on the top. And that's ready for winter. For things like the sycamore seeds, I can literally just stick that into the soil with the wing sticking up. That's absolutely fine. As long as the seed is under the soil, that's great. Now, seeds are so clever because they know when it's winter, and they will wait until they felt it get really cold. So these pots need to sit outside. When they feel it get really cold, they will know that it's winter. And when it starts to get warm again, they'll know it's spring. And then only start to grow once they've been cold and got warm again, because then they will feel that the frost is gone and they can start growing. So they're just going to sit in that pot outside, just getting rained on. I'm not going to water them any extra. They're just going to have whatever nature does. And then in spring, I'm going to tip that out and see which ones have started growing into trees. And they're ones I'm going to put into pots. So I'll give them their own little new fresh pots, each one pot for each one that's growing, for each seed, and they will become their own little trees. So that's how I'm going to then turn them into trees. Once they're in their pots, I'm going to make sure I keep watering them throughout the summer, and they will grow into young little trees. Like I've got a little one here. You might not be able to see it very well. Can you see the little tiny tree? So this one's just a year old. It depends on the type of tree you've got. They'll grow, some of them will grow really quickly. Some of them, an oak tree, in about 2 years will only be this big. So they'll grow in different speeds. But hopefully you guys can go and have fun collecting some seeds and eventually turning them into little trees. Now there's something quite special about doing this, guys, because you can take the tiniest little acorn, and that could grow into a tree that lives for 1,000 years. In its time, that could make 1 million seeds. So whilst it's just a tiny acorn, that could become a forest in the future. So what you plant now could be tomorrow's forest. So it's really, really special to do. Now I'm just going to show you something that you might want to do next if you've enjoyed learning about seeds and you are going to hopefully do something with that knowledge. So hopefully you know how trees make seed. You know the different types of seeds. You know how trees spread their seeds further. They disperse them. And you've got an idea of how you can grow trees from seed. Like I say, the main thing for you to have with you is some sand, some soil. It's useful to have something with watering. And maybe even a potato masher if you're doing some fleshy fruit. And you forget or your teachers would like a little bit more help, there is a website called the Tree Growers Guide, which has got a young tree growers guide with lots of different fun activities in, and a tree growers guide for adults with lots of detail in there as well. That will help you grow your trees from seed. But first, I'm going to give you a quick quiz. Let's see what you can remember. This might be a bit of a challenge, guys. Get your brains ready. I'm looking forward to hearing what you've remembered. So, 7 questions. Question number 1. Let's type it in the chat if you know the answer. What is the protective layer called around the embryo in the tree seed? It's got a name. It links to something that you might have in life. You might have one at school today. It's something that is a protective layer. It's the coat, Evie. Well done. Absolutely spot on. And that hugs it and protects it. Corns, wing seeds, nuts, and which seed type is missing from that list? Corns, wing seed, nuts, and which of the 4 have I forgotten? Fleshy fruit. Harry, again, well done. Well done, Charlie. Number 3. Why do seeds need to fall away from the mother tree? Why do they need to go far away from the mother tree? What do they need to get by going further away? Can you remember? Sunlight. Absolutely. They don't want to be shaded by the mother tree. They need their own sunlight. Anything else that they need? Anyone got anything other than that? Space. And they don't want their roots entangled. Absolutely. They want their own space for their own roots so they can get water. Absolutely. How do many fleshy fruits get dispersed? Sophie Water, well done. I'm not going to explain the word dispersed again. I'm going to see if you can remember it. How do many of the fleshy fruits get dispersed? How do the birds, absolutely, animals, creatures. I have squirrels that eat the apples off that tree. So squirrels can also disperse some fleshy fruit seeds as well. But normally something eats it and then poops it out. And number 5, how can you tell if a nut is likely to grow into a tree? What test can you do to see if a nut, like a chestnut, that one's even got a little birch seed stuck on it now. How can you tell if it's likely to grow into it? It's going to sink, absolutely. So sink is success. Izzy, I get it wrong all the time. Floating is bad. A float is fail. Sink is success. That's how I remember. So sink is success. That means it's likely to grow into a tree. Float is a fail. Sometimes things like beech, that are these little funny ones that come out of these hairy pods, sometimes they will sink. They will float and they will still be fine. So you can still try planting them, but they're less likely to. What should you mix your soil with when you're preparing your seeds for winter? I said you should mix it half and half soil and half. What was the other thing? Sand, absolutely. And the last one, how can you keep safe whilst gathering seed? Can you remember one of the things, any one of the things you could do whilst gathering seed to keep safe, to make sure that you don't get any injuries, don't have any accidents? Which is an important one because we need to make sure we stay safe. Gloves, yes. Pick seeds from the ground instead of climbing the trees. Absolutely spot on. Now, I hope you've enjoyed learning about the magic of tree seeds and the amazing things that they do to grow into trees. Take care of surroundings always, and always take what you need, and what you don't need, put back out for nature. Throw it back out into your garden, into the ground, because something will want to eat it. It will turn into compost. It will decompose. It'll do great things for nature. So don't keep it in your pockets. Don't put it in the bin. Put it back outside for nature to make use of. Some of our schools around the UK, they are growing their own tree nurseries. That means that they have got sections of their school grounds that they have got planters, they've got things where they're trying to grow baby trees for their school and for their communities. And it's something that's amazing to do if you can. If not, still go outside, explore nature, find tree seeds, learn more about them. And the last worksheet that was in the pack, doesn't matter if you don't have it, you can still see what's on the screen, is a tree seed bingo. So like I said, it's great to be out in nature, having fun, getting exercise. So even if you're not able to grow your own trees from seed, or you don't have the space for them, get out and see what you can find. There are 9 things on here. It would be wonderful if you could find all 9 of them, either in your school grounds or walking home, or just see how many of the 9 you can find around you and your community as you move about. Trees with red seeds, wildlife that might eat tree seeds, like squirrels, birds, mice, seeds that are still hanging from trees. So there's a whole bunch of things on there that for you to look out for, to keep your eyes peeled, to see what is around you, and to see what wonders you can discover. One last thing I'm just going to show you before you go. I'll stop sharing. Is I've got this holly seed right in front of me. You can see these leaves on the holly tree have got no prickles on whatsoever, and everyone thinks of holly as a prickly tree. But actually, holly trees learn to be prickly when something eats them or when someone cuts them. So this holly tree here is starting to learn to be prickly, and it's starting to grow prickles on some leaves, but others are still smooth. So you will only see prickles on leaves of holly trees where they've been eaten and nibbled or where they've been cut. So that's nature being clever. So I hope that you've had a fantastic time learning about the amazing magic that nature creates with its trees and seeds. And I hope that you have fun exploring nature and seeing if you can find any tree seeds around you in your school grounds, in your garden, on your way to or from school. Important message for whoever remembered that one: don't eat any of them. It's never a good idea to eat tree seeds, but you can explore them, you can find them, and you can have fun being around nature a little bit more. If anyone's got any more questions, please feel free to pop them into the chat. You are more than welcome to. I'm just going to pop some links in there that might be useful to your teacher if you haven't already got them. Things like signing up for Young Tree Champions, finding those Young Tree Growers guide. You've been awesome, guys. I love that your answers have been absolutely spot on and you've remembered loads. So thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon, guys. Thanks so much. Take care. Be awesome. Be a force for nature.